Hello, my name is Katie and welcome to my video. Today we're filming my favorite video, and that is November book releases. Well, book releases in general, I guess, are my favorite, but we're doing November this round. What I've done this time is gone by genre, or category kind of, and then gone by release date within those categories, I guess. And hopefully I've time-stamped the different categories because this is going to be long. I have like 27 pages of notes on my Google Doc. So you're going to want to skip through this and just go to whatever you're interested in. Most of these are books that I personally am interested in. Some of them I just found to be interesting that they were coming out. Some of these I thought bigger name authors that people like to read or that people will know. And we'll get into that as I go through. More or less, I'm just giving you the title of the book, the release date, and then like reading the synopsis. I don't know, that's how I find books, so. I know I probably should like read the synopsis and develop my own synopsis, but I just really can't be bothered, honestly. So let's get into this. We're going to start with young adult and then go from there. Coming out November 1st, Spellbreaker by Charlie N. Holmberg. The orphaned Elsie Camden learned as a girl that there were two kinds of wizards in the world, those who pay for the power to cast spells, and those, like her, born with the ability to break them. But as an unlicensed magic user, her gift is a crime. Commissioned by an underground group known as the Cowls, Elsie uses her spell breaking to push back against the aristocrats and help the common man. She always did love the tale of Robin Hood. Elite magic user Bacchus Kelsey is one elusive spell away from his mastership when he catches Elsie breaking an enchantment. To protect her secret, Elsie strikes a bargain. She'll help Bacchus fix unruly spells around his estate if he doesn't turn her in. Working together, Elsie's trust in and fondness for the handsome stranger grows. So does her trepidation about the rise in the murders of wizards and the thefts of the spellbooks their bodies leave behind. For a rogue spellbreaker like Elsie, there's so much to learn about her powers, her family, the intriguing Bacchus, and the untold dangers shadowing every step of a journey she's destined to complete. But will she uncover the mystery before it's too late to save everything she loves? I think that's going to be some kind of Robin Hood retelling. That's the vibe I was getting from the fact that they said in the synopsis that she was trying to be Robin Hood. And I know a lot of people really love retellings, so I don't know if that's one I'll necessarily pick up, but I thought it was interesting. Next is one that I am kind of interested in. It's the Enigma game by Elizabeth Wein? Wein? I don't know. It comes out November 3rd. She is the author of Codename Verity. I read Codename Verity and I found it to be okay, but I know it's a series and I didn't continue. This is technically book 4 in the Codename Verity series, however, it seems to me like they can each be read individually based on the synopsis. So the Enigma game, I'm actually far more interested in it than I was Codename Verity. A German soldier risks his life to drop off the sought-after Enigma machine to British intelligence, hiding it in a pub in a small town in northeast Scotland and unwittingly bringing together 4 very different people who decide to keep it to themselves. Louisa Adair, a young teen girl hired to look after the pub owner's elderly German-born aunt, Jane Warner, finds it but doesn't report it. Flight Lieutenant Jamie Beaufort Stewart intercepts the signal but can't figure it out. Ellen McEwen, volunteer at the local airfield, acts as the go-between and messenger after Louisa involves Jane in translating. The planes under Jamie's command seem charmed, as Jamie knows exactly where to go while other squadrons suffer, and the 4 are loath to give up the machine even after Elizabeth Lynne from British intelligence arrives, even after the Germans start bombing the tiny town. I really am interested in picking that up. I think it'll be good. It's historical fiction, which I love, and typically I don't like YA historical fiction as much. But I think this is a little bit more interesting than just your standard World War II historical fiction. On November 3rd, A Curse of Ash and Ember by Jo Spurrier. A dead witch, a bitter curse, a battle of magic. Some people knit socks by the fire at night. Gisha Blackbone made monsters. But the old witch is dead now, and somehow it's Elodie's job to clean up the mess. When she was hired at Black Oak Cottage, Elodie had no idea she'd find herself working for a witch, and her acid-tongued new mistress, Alida, was not expecting a housemaid to turn up on her doorstep. Gisha's final curse left Alida practically dead on her feet, and now, with huge monsters roaming the woods, a demonic tree lurking in the orchard, and an angry warlock demanding repayment of a debt, Alida needs Elodie's help whether she likes it or not. And no matter what the old witch throws at her, to Elodie, it's still better than going back home. Witches are fun. I'm always up to read a witch story. This one's one I've actually heard a little bit about, and that is Master of One by Jaida Jones. It comes out November 10th. Sinister sorcery, gallows humor, a queer romance so glorious it could be right out of Fey legend itself. Master of One is a fantasy unlike any other. I don't know about that. Rags is a thief, an excellent one. He's stolen into nobles' coffers, picked soldiers' pockets, and even liberated a ring or two off the fingers of passers-by, until he's caught by the Queen's Guard and forced to find an ancient Fey relic for a sadistic royal sorcerer. But Rags could never have guessed this relic would actually be a Fey himself, a distractingly handsome, annoyingly perfect, ancient Fey prince called Shining Talon. Good thing Rags can think on his toes, because things just get stranger from there. With the heist and intrigue of Six of Crows and the dark fairy tale feel of The Cruel Prince, this young adult fantasy debut will have readers rooting for a pair of reluctant heroes as they take on a world-ending Fey prophecy, a malicious royal plot, and most dangerously of all, their feelings for each other. I think this will be kind of cool because you rarely see male-male romances in like YA at all, but specifically in YA fantasy. Next, we have another retelling. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I'm personally not much of a fan of Beauty and the Beast retellings because I think they're overdone. I am really sick and tired of them. And to be honest, the only thing I like about Beauty and the Beast is the library. But anyway, this is Rebel Rose by Emma Theriault, and it comes out November 10th. Happily Ever After is only the beginning as Belle takes on the responsibility of becoming queen and learns to balance duty, love, and sacrifice, all while navigating dark political intrigue and a touch of magic. It's 1789 and France is on the brink of revolution. Belle has finally broken the Enchantress's curse, restoring the beast to his human form and bringing life back to their castle in the province of Aveyron. But in Paris, the fires of change are burning, and it's only a matter of time before the rebellion arrives on their doorstep. Not so very long ago, Belle dreamed of leaving her provincial home for a life of adventure, but now she finds herself living in a palace torn between her past as a commoner and her future as royalty. While Belle grapples with her newfound position, there are those who would do anything to keep her from power. When she stumbles across a magic mirror that holds a dire warning, Belle wants nothing more than to ignore the mysterious voice calling her to accept a crown she never desired. But violent factions of the revolution may already be lurking within her own castle, and doing nothing would endanger everything she holds dear. With the fate of her country, her love, and her life at stake, Belle must decide if she is ready to embrace her own strength, and the magic that ties her to so many female rulers before her, to become the queen she is meant to be. So if you like Beauty and the Beast, you'll probably want to pick that up. Also on November 10th, we have The Last Voyage of Poe Blythe by Ali Condie. Ali Condie, I don't think she's published anything in quite a long time. So I think this should be interesting. I haven't read, what's the series she's known for? Is it Matched? Yeah, I haven't read that, but this one sounds a little more up my alley. There is something Poe Blythe, the 17-year-old captain of the outpost's last mining ship, wants far more than the gold they tear from the Serpentine River. Revenge. Poe has vowed to annihilate the river raiders who robbed her of everything 2 years ago. But as she navigates the treacherous waters of the Serpentine and realizes there might be a traitor among her crew, she must also reckon with who she has become, who she wants to be, and the ways love can change and shape you, even and especially when you think all is lost. This one sounds pretty interesting to me. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of discussion surrounding like grief and just managing emotions. Also on November 10th, there's a lot of books coming out on November 10th. City of the Uncommon Thief by Lynne Bertrand. Gilder's work, foundlings scrub the bogs, needles bind, swords tear, and men leave. There is nothing uncommon in this city. I hope Errol Thebes is dead. We both know he is safer that way. In a walled city of mile-high Iron Guild towers, many things are common knowledge. No book in any of the city's libraries reveals its place on a calendar or a map. No living beasts can be found within the city's walls, and no good comes to the guilder or foundling who trespasses too far from their labors. Even on the tower rooftops, where Errol Thebes and the rest of the city's teenagers pass a few short years under an open sky, no one truly believes anything uncommon is possible within the city walls. But one guildmaster has broken tradition to protect her child, and as a result the whole city faces an uncommon threat. A pair of black iron spikes that have the power of both sword and needle on the rib cages of men have gone missing. But the mayhem they cause rises everywhere. If the spikes are not found and contained, no wall will be high enough to protect the city, or the world beyond it. And Errol Thebes? He's not dead, and he's certainly not safe. Honestly, this synopsis confuses the heck out of me. I don't know what's going on, but I want to know what's going on. And so I think they did their job. On November 17th, we have These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I believe this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, which again is not something I love in books. However, this is set in 1920s Shanghai, and that sounds fabulous. The year is 1926, and Shanghai hums to the tune of debauchery. A blood feud between two gangs runs the streets red, leaving the city helpless in the grip of chaos. At the heart of it all is 18-year-old Juliet Kai, a former flapper who has returned to assume her role as the proud heir of the Scarlet Gang, a network of criminals far above the law. Their only rivals in power are the White Flowers, who have fought the Scarlets for generations, and behind every move is their heir, Roman Montegov, Juliet's first love and first betrayal. But when gangsters on both sides show signs of instability culminating in clawing their own throats out, the people start to whisper of a contagion, a madness, of a monster in the shadows. As the deaths stack up, Juliet and Roma must set their guns and grudges aside and work together, for if they can't stop this mayhem, then there will be no city left for either to rule. We'll see. While I love the idea of a setting of 1926 Shanghai, I'm not sure that the plot itself is going to be good enough to interest me. Next we have Malcolm and Me by Robin Farmer. It releases November 17th. Philly native Roberta Forrest is a precocious rebel with the soul of a poet. The 13-year-old is young, gifted, black, and Catholic, although she's uncertain about the Catholic part after she calls Thomas Jefferson a hypocrite for enslaving people, and her nun responds with a racist insult. Their ensuing fight makes Roberta question God and the important adults in her life, all of whom seem to see truth as gray when Roberta believes it's black or white. An upcoming essay contest, writing poetry, and reading the autobiography of Malcolm X all help Roberta cope with the various difficulties she's experiencing in her life, including her parents' troubled marriage. But when she's told she's ineligible to compete in the school's essay contest, her explosive reaction to the news leads to a confrontation with her mother, who shares some family truths Roberta isn't ready for. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this book because it covers a wide variety of things. You have parents who appear to be heading towards divorce. You have a teenage girl who's struggling with her belief in God and her, in Roberta's case, racism. And then I think it's nice that she's 13, because I think a lot of YA is starting to get aged up to the point where it's almost becoming adult characters but written in a YA style. And I think that's done a disservice to the younger readers who are actually the age group that YA is geared towards, if that makes sense. I'm not saying you shouldn't read YA if you're an adult. I do all the time. But I just think we maybe shouldn't also forget about the young teens, the 13 and 14-year-olds, who are also reading young adult books. Next, on November 17th, we have The 12 Realms by A.D. Sloane. Nabi, a young Moorish royal, endures harrowing nights of chilling visions. When an eccentric priest and a mysterious shaman seek to end her horrors, they unveil a series of cryptic messages and discover that her dreams are linked to an ages-old mystical prophecy with global implications. The 12 Realms is a historical reimagining that links kings and paupers, priests and soldiers, shamans and witches in an epic adventure. Nabi is the key within a tapestry of intertwined people from Western Africa to the Far East and the British Isles who must join forces and find a weapon that will defeat the shadows prophesied to rise from the deep. I really love that we're getting a lot more fantasy books that are set on Middle Eastern folklore or African folklore, because I'm honestly so tired of European-based fantasy. I feel like I've read it so many times that there's not much new happening there. November 17th, Soulswift by Megan Bannen. Honestly, I initially was only interested because I thought the cover was really pretty. Gelia is a vessel, a girl who channels the world of the one true God through song. Cloistered with the other vessels of her faith, she believes, as all Ovenists do, that a saint imprisoned Elath, the great demon, centuries ago, saving humanity from earthly temptation. When Gelia stumbles into a deadly cover-up by the Ovenist military, she reluctantly teams up with Tavik, an enemy soldier, to survive. Tavik believes that Elath is actually a mother goddess who must be set free, but while he succeeds in opening her prison, he inadvertently turns Gelia into Elath's unwilling human vessel. Now the church that raised Gelia considers her a threat. In a race against the clock, she and Tavik must find a way to exorcise Elath's presence from her body. But will this release stop the countdown to the end of the world, or will it be the cause of the Earth's destruction? And as Tavik and Gelia grow closer, another question lingers between them. What will become of Gelia? So yeah, initially, just the cover interested me, but that synopsis has got me so intrigued. I might pick this one up. I think this is the first one that I might actually pick up on this list so far. On November 24th, we have Ruinsong by Julia Ember. Her voice was her prison, now it's her weapon. In a world where magic is sung, a powerful mage named Cadence must choose between the two. For years, she has been forced to torture her country's disgraced nobility at her ruthless queen's bidding. But when she is reunited with her childhood friend, a noblewoman with ties to the Underground Rebellion, she must finally make a choice, take a stand to free their country from oppression, or follow in the queen's footsteps and become a monster herself. In this dark and lush LGBTQ+ romantic fantasy, two young women from rival factions must work together to reunite their country as they wrestle with their feelings for each other. I'll be interested to see reviews on this one, because it doesn't sound that unique to me, but we'll see. And then lastly, also on November 24th, Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. I read Ready Player 1, and I liked it, but I was happy with it ending there. I have no interest in reading Ready Player 2, and I hope to God they don't make a movie. Next is mystery thrillers. I don't think that I really want to read synopses for these, so I might just read like the first little chunk. That way, you can get a feel for what it's about, but then hopefully we don't run into any spoilers. On November 1st, The Haunting of Brynn Wilder by Wendy Webb. After a devastating loss, Brynn Wilder escapes to Wharton, a tourist town on Lake Superior, to reset. Checking into a quaint boarding house for the summer, she hopes to put her life into perspective. In her fellow lodgers, she finds a friendly company of strangers, the frail Alice, cared for by a married couple with a heartbreaking story of their own, Luann, the eccentric and lovable owner of the inn, and Dominic, an unsettling, handsome man inked from head to toe in mesmerizing tattoos. But in this inviting refuge, where a century of souls has passed, a mystery begins to swirl. Alice knows things about Brynn, about all of them, that she shouldn't. Bad dreams and night whispers lure Brynn to a shuttered room at the end of the hall, a room still heavy with a recent death. And now she's become irresistibly drawn to Dominic, even in the shadow of rumors that wherever he goes, suspicious death follows. Oh, that sounds so haunting. And I love that it's kind of centered on a boarding house. Love books centered on houses. Also on the 1st of November, Girls of Brackenhill by Kate Moretti. A newly engaged woman is summoned to her aunt's storybook mansion in the Catskill Mountains. Once again, focuses on a house. Her beloved aunt has been killed in a tragic car accident, and her uncle is gravely ill and at the end of his life. To the scene of her sister's mysterious and traumatic disappearance 16 years earlier. She discovers that some family secrets will not stay buried, and sometimes old ghosts haunt forever. On November 10th, Little Cruelties by Liz Nugent. The story begins with a funeral. One of 3 brothers is dead, mourned by his siblings. But which one, and how, and most importantly, why? November 10th, Little Threats by Emily Schultz. Both a taut whodunit and a haunting snapshot of the effects of a violent crime, Little Threats tells the story of a woman who served 15 years in prison for murder, and now it's time to find out if she's guilty. On November 10th, The Kingdom by Jo Nesbo. Roy and Carl have spent their whole lives running from the darkness in their past, but when Carl finally returns to make peace with it, the 2 brothers are inexorably drawn into a reckoning with their own demons. On November 17th, Do Not Disturb by Claire Douglas. Following a traumatic event in London, Kirsty Woodhouse packs up her family and moves back to her native Wales. There she sets up her new home with her husband and 2 young daughters and goes into business with her difficult mother, managing a guest house in the Brecon Beacons. But when the guest house is ready to be occupied, Kirsty encounters the last person she ever expected to see, her estranged cousin Selena. It has been 17 years since they last talked, when Selena tore everything apart between them. Why has she chosen now to walk back into Kirsty's life? Is Selena running from something too, or is there an even darker reason for her visit? As Kirsty becomes increasingly concerned for the safety of her daughters, her dream home begins to feel like her worst nightmare. The Lady Upstairs by Halley Sutton? Haley Sutton? The 2 L's are throwing me off. I feel like it's Halley. Anyway, November 17th. A modern-day noir featuring a twisty cat-and-mouse chase. This dark debut thriller tells the story of a woman who makes a living taking down terrible men, then finds herself in over her head and with blood on her hands. The only way out? Pull off one final con. Very interested to see what modern-day noir would feel like. And lastly, November 23rd, The Stranger in My Bed by Karen King. When Freya first met Phil, she thought he was the man of her dreams. He bought her roses every week, booked surprise trips to sun-soaked destinations, and showed her affection like she'd never experienced before. But over time, the dream had become a violent nightmare, and now Freya is packing her bags, knowing it's time she escaped their increasingly broken marriage. But then Freya gets a visit from the police. Phil's been in a horrific car crash, and as he comes around, it becomes clear that he remembers nothing since their blissful honeymoon 2 years before, back when their relationship was perfect. All he wants is to be happily married again. Freya knows giving him another chance could be dangerous, but now he's the one who needs her. It's a chance to turn the tables and to change the outcome of their relationship once and for all. After all, he will only know what she chooses to tell him. Moving on, this is roughly adult contemporary romance type thing. Some of these could probably be classified as historical fiction, but I did my best. First, on November 3rd, The Gentleman and the Thief by Sarah M. Eden. From the moment Hollis Darby meets Anna Newport, he's smitten. Even though he's from a wealthy, established family and she isn't, he wishes he could have a life with her by his side. But Hollis has a secret. The deep coffers that have kept his family afloat for generations are bare, so he supports himself by writing penny dreadfuls under a pseudonym. If not for the income from his novels, he would be broke. Anna Newport also has a secret. Though she once had a place in society thanks to her father's successful business, bankruptcy and scandal reduced his fortune to nothing more than a crumbling townhouse. So Anna teaches music during the day, and at night she assumes the identity of the Phantom Fox. She breaks into the homes of the wealthy to reclaim trinkets and treasures she feels were unjustly stolen from her family when they were struggling. When Hollis's brother needs to hire a music tutor for his daughter, Hollis recommends Anna, giving him a chance to spend time with her. Anna needs the income and is eager for the opportunity to get to know the enigmatic gentleman. What neither of them expects is how difficult it will be to keep their respective secrets from each other. When a spree of robberies rocks the city, Anna and Hollis join forces to solve the crimes, discovering that working together deepens the affection between them. After all, who better to save the day than a gentleman and a thief? Oh my god, if this is done right, the dynamic between those two characters is going to be fantastic. Next up, on November 10th, A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem by Amanda Collins. England, 1865. As one of England's most notorious newspaper columnists, Lady Catherine Bascom believes knowledge is power, and she's determined to inform and educate the ladies of London on the nefarious and deadly criminals who are preying on the fairer sex. When her reporting leads to the arrest of a notorious killer, however, Catherine flees to a country house party to escape her newfound notoriety, only to witness a murder on her very first night. When the lead detective accuses Catherine of inflaming rather than informing the public with her column, she vows to prove him wrong. Detective Inspector Andrew Eversham's refusal to compromise his investigations nearly cost him his own career, and he blames Catherine. To avoid bad publicity, his superiors are pressuring him to solve the cases quickly rather than correctly. When he discovers she's the key witness in a new crime, he's determined to prevent the beautiful widow from once again wreaking havoc on his case. Yet, as Catherine proves surprisingly insightful and Andrew impresses Catherine with his lethal competency, both are forced to admit the fire between them is more flirtatious than furious. But to explore the passion between them, they'll need to catch a killer. Sounds like it's going to be like Hate to Love, so if you like that, this might be for you. Next, on November 10th, Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. After a disastrous blind date, Darcy Lowell is desperate to stop her well-meaning brother from playing matchmaker ever again. Love and the inevitable heartbreak is the last thing she wants, so she fibs and says her latest setup was a success. Darcy doesn't expect her lie to bite her in the ass. Elle Jones, one of the astrologers behind the popular Twitter account Oh My Stars, dreams of finding her soulmate, but she knows it is most assuredly not Darcy, a no-nonsense stick-in-the-mud who is way too analytical, punctual, and skeptical for someone as free-spirited as Elle. When Darcy's brother and Elle's new business partner expresses how happy he is that they hit it off, Elle is baffled. Was Darcy on the same date? Because awkward. When Darcy begs Elle to play along, she agrees to pretend they're dating to save face, but with a few conditions. Darcy must help Elle navigate her own overbearing family over the holidays, and their arrangement expires on New Year's Eve. The last thing they expect is to develop real feelings during a fake relationship. I think that one sounds cute. If you like the fake dating trope, you might look into that one. Releasing November 17th, The Star-Crossed Sisters of Tuscany by Laurie Nelson Spielman. A trio of second-born daughters set out to break the family curse that says they'll never find love on a whirlwind journey through the lush Italian countryside. Since the day Filomena Fontana cast a curse upon her sister more than 200 years ago, not one second-born Fontana daughter has found lasting love. Some, like second-born Amelia, the happily single baker at her grandfather's Brooklyn deli, claim it's an odd coincidence. Others, like her sexy, desperate-for-love cousin Lucy, insist it's a true hex. But both are bewildered when their great-aunt calls with an astounding proposition. If they accompany her to her homeland of Italy, Aunt Poppy vows she'll meet the love of her life on the steps of the Ravello Cathedral on her 80th birthday, and break the Fontana second daughter curse once and for all. This sounds so much fun. I love that there's a little bit of a magical element to it, and then a lot of it takes place in Italy, which I think, if the author is good at writing, setting, could be fantastic. Moving on to adult science fiction and fantasy. First up on November 3rd, The Preserve by Ariel S. Winter. Decimated by plague, the human population is now a minority. Robots, complex AIs almost indistinguishable from humans, are the ruling majority. 9 months ago, in a controversial move, the robot government opened a series of preserves designated areas where humans can choose to live without robot interference. Now the preserves face their first challenge. Someone has been murdered. Chief of Police Jesse Lawton of the Sokar Preserve is assigned to the case. He fears the factions that were opposed to the preserves will use the crime as evidence that the new system does not work. As he digs for information, robots in the outside world start turning up dead from bad drug-like programs that may have originated on Sokar land. And when Lawton learns his murder victim was a hacker who wrote drug programs, it appears that the two cases might be linked. Soon, it's clear that the entire preserve system is in danger of collapsing. Lawton's former partner, a robot named Kerr, arrives to assist on the case, and they soon uncover shocking secrets revealing that life on the preserve is not as peaceful as its human residents claim. But in order to protect humanity's new way of life, Lawton must solve this murder before it's too late. That sounds just weird enough to work is a really good sci-fi. This one I'm really excited about. It comes out November 12th. It's called The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. At Montvert, an exclusive academy tucked away in the mountains, the best and brightest are trained for excellence in the Grand Jeu, an arcane and mysterious contest. Leo Martin was once a student there, but lost his passion for the Grand Jeu following a violent tragedy. Now he returns in disgrace, exiled to his old place of learning with his political career in tatters. Montvert has changed since he studied there, even allowing a woman, Claire Dryden, to serve in the Grand Jeu's highest office of Magister Ludi. When Leo first sees Claire, he senses an odd connection with her, though he's sure they have never met before. Both Leo and Claire have built their lives on lies, and as the legendary Midsummer Game, the climax of the year, draws closer, secrets are whispering in the walls. Yeah, I'm excited. On November 13th, we have Nucleation by Kimberly Unger. Helen Viktorovich holds the unique distinction of failing at first contact, and she did it in both virtual reality and outer space. Only the most elite teams of operators and navigators get to pilot in remote space mining operations, and no one was better than Helen and her navigator. Together, they secured a multi-billion contract for establishing an interstellar gate to a distant star. But during a routine mission, what should have been an easy success turned deadly. Helen, grounded in a desk job, has overeager junior pilots jockeying to take her place, jealous corporate rivals, and nasty rumors blaming her for the botched mission. Meanwhile, Helen's new discovery in space, the Scale, seems to be evolving. When someone or something wants to terminate her project, Helen must race to find out why before it is far too late. I think that'll be kind of cool because I've read, like, First Contact with Aliens, but I don't know that I've ever read First Contact with I don't know that I've ever read First Contact with Aliens gone horribly wrong. So that could be cool. Okay, this next one, I don't know. I'm really conflicted on. Because there's a part of me that thinks it's going to be awesome, and then there's a part of me that doesn't even want to bother with it, and I just don't know where I fall. That is The Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg Latour. It comes out November 17th. Gwendolyn Grimm intended to seduce men and women across the galaxy while working as a ship tinkerer on the finest vessels in the Crescent Star system. Alas, terminal illness is a buzzkill. When a life-saving opportunity struts into her life dressed in a pinstripe suit, she is made an offer she can't refuse: become a cyborg and work as a tinkerer for Cirque du Bourg, the once renowned cyborg circus. The problem is, a new law has banned the creation of new cyborgs, and becoming one means execution if caught. Thus, no one cares to see the wonders of man and machine anymore. Ticket sales continue to fall as the circus announces a competition to determine which acts will perform for the Emperor on his home planet, an opportunity with the potential to save the circus from bankruptcy. But the competition has deadly consequences. Losing acts have their cyborg implants forcibly removed, and those who survive the extraction are banished from the circus. As the Tinkerer, Gwendolyn is forced to perform the revolting task of removing the cyborg implants from the losing performers. When she falls for both the man running the competition and a woman competing in it, she must decide who to protect. But can she risk having to harvest the people she loves the most? Look, that last sentence. Can she risk having to harvest the people she loves the most? Okay, usually you'll see that sentence, but it's like, can she risk having to lose the people she loves the most? Harvest? God. That tells you what the stakes are in this particular book. Ooh, okay. The Burning God by R.F. Kuang comes out on the 17th. This is the final book in the Poppy War trilogy. Because it's the final book, I'm not going to read the synopsis or anything. Honestly, if you're on YouTube at all and you like fantasy, you've heard of this series. Also on November 17th, Nofet Gloss by Essa Hansen. Caden's planet is destroyed, his family gone, and his only hope for survival is a crew of misfit aliens and a mysterious ship that seems to have a soul and a universe of its own. Together, they will show him that the universe is much bigger, much more advanced, and much more mysterious than Caden had ever imagined. But the universe hides dangers as well, and soon Caden has his own plans. He vows to do anything it takes to get revenge on the slavers who murdered his people and took away his home. To destroy their regime, he must infiltrate and dismantle them from the inside or die trying. So I think overall I tend to prefer sci-fi that's more space-based rather than like robots on the Earth. So I think I might like that one. Next we have The Bright and Breaking Sea by Chloe Neal. It releases November 17th. November 17th is also a big day. Anyway, Kit Brightling, rescued as a foundling and raised in a home for talented girls, has worked hard to rise through the ranks of the Isle's Crown Command and become one of the few female captains in Queen Charlotte's fleet. Her ship is small, but she's fast, in part because of Kit's magical affinity to the sea. But the waters become perilous when the Queen sends Kit on a special mission with a partner she never asked for. Rian Grant, Viscount Queenscliff, may be a veteran of the Continental War, but Kit doesn't know him or his motives, and she's dealt with one too many members of the Beau Monde. But Kit has her orders. The Queen has commanded they journey to a dangerous pirate quay and rescue a spy who's been gathering intelligence on the exiled Emperor of Gallia. Kit can lead her ship and clever crew on her own, but with the fate of Queen and country at stake, Kit and Rian must learn to trust each other or else the Isles will fall. It has been a very long time since I've read a good, pirate fantasy. So I'll probably pick this one up too. Maybe. I say that, and I bought, no books in October, which I'm very proud of, actually. On to historical fiction. Some of these sound very good. On November 1st, The Magnificent Dappled Sea by David Barrow releases. In a small northern Italian village, 9-year-old Luca Taviano catches a stubborn cold and is subsequently diagnosed with leukemia. His only hope for survival is a bone marrow transplant. After an exhaustive search, a match turns up 3,000 miles away in the form of a most unlikely donor, Joseph Neiman, a rabbi in Brooklyn, New York, who is suffering from a debilitating crisis of faith. As Luca's young nurse, Nina Vicelli, risks her career and races against time to help save the spirited red-headed boy, she uncovers terrible secrets from World War II, secrets that reveal how a Catholic child could have Jewish genes. Can inheritance be transcended by accidents of love? This is the question at the heart of This Magnificent Dappled Sea, a novel that challenges the idea of identity and celebrates the ties that bind us together. Ugh, it's going to be heartbreaking and magnificent. Also on November 1st, The Last Correspondent by Soraya M. Lane. When journalist Ella Franks is unmasked as a woman writing under a male pseudonym, she loses her job. But having risked everything to write, she refuses to be silenced and leaps at the chance to become a correspondent in war-torn France. Already entrenched in the thoroughly male arena of war reporting is feisty American photojournalist Dani Bradford. Together with her best friend and partner Andy, she is determined to cover the events unfolding in Normandy, and to discover the whereabouts of Andy's flighty sister, Vogue model Chloe, who has followed a lover into the French resistance. When trailblazing efforts turn to tragedy, Dani, Ella, and Chloe are drawn together and soon form a formidable team. Each woman is determined to follow her dreams no matter what and to make her voice heard over the noise of war. Europe is a perilous place with danger at every turn. They'll need to rely on each other if they are to get their stories back and themselves out alive. Will the adventure and love they find be worth the journey of their lives? I'm not actually sure I ever get tired of World War II historical fiction. Next, on November 10th, we have Tsarina by Ellen Alpstein. I want this so bad. St. Petersburg, 1725. Peter the Great lies dying in his magnificent winter palace. The weakness and treachery of his only son has driven his father to an appalling act of cruelty and left the empire without an heir. Russia risks falling into chaos. Into the void steps the woman who has been by his side for decades, his second wife, Catherine, I can't pronounce that name. Catherine Alexeyevna? Maybe? As ambitious, ruthless, and passionate as Peter himself. Born into devastating poverty, Catherine used her extraordinary beauty and shrewd intelligence to ingratiate herself with Peter's powerful generals, finally seducing the Tsar himself. But even amongst the splendor and opulence of her new life, the lavish feasts, glittering jewels, and candlelit hours in Peter's bedchamber, she knows the peril of her position. Peter's attentions are fickle, and his rage is powerful. His first wife is condemned to a prison cell, her lover impaled alive in Red Square. And now Catherine faces the ultimate test. Can she keep the Tsar's death a secret as she plays a lethal game to destroy her enemies and take the crown for herself? Oh my god, I need to read this so bad. I read this massive book on the entire Romanov dynasty back in August, and this Catherine was one of the most interesting characters in the entire book. And so to read like a historical fiction about her, I think is going to be great. Oh my god, this one I really want to. The Forgotten Sister by Nicola Cornick. It comes out November 10th. It's 1560. Amy Robsart is trapped in a loveless marriage to Robert Dudley, a member of the court of Queen Elizabeth I. Surrounded by enemies and with nowhere left to turn, Amy hatches a desperate scheme to escape, one with devastating consequences that will echo through the centuries. Present day. When Lizzie Kingdom is forced to withdraw from the public eye in a blaze of scandal, it seems her life is over. But she's about to encounter a young man, Johnny Robsart, whose fate will interlace with hers in the most unexpected of ways. For Johnny is certain that Lizzie is linked to a terrible secret dating back to Tudor times. If Lizzie is brave enough to go in search of the truth, then what she discovers will change the course of their lives forever. Yes, I need it. The Lady Brewer of London by Karen Brooks comes out November 10th. 1405, the daughter of a wealthy merchant, Annika Sheldrake, suddenly finds her family bankrupted when her father's ship is swept away at sea. Forced to find a way to provide for herself and her siblings, Annika rejects an offer of marriage from a despised cousin and instead turns to her late mother's family business, brewing ale. Armed with her mother's recipes, she then makes a bold deal with her father's aristocratic employer, putting her home and family at risk. Thanks to her fierce determination, Annika's brew wins a following and begins to turn a profit. But her rise threatens some in her community, and those closest to her are left to pay the price. As Annika slowly pieces her life together again, she finds an unlikely ally in a London brothel owner. Determined not only to reclaim her livelihood and her family, Annika vows not to let anyone stand in the way of her forging her own destiny. Next, on November 10th, we have Murder in Old Bombay by Nev March. In 1892, Bombay is the center of British India. Nearby, Captain Jim Agnihotri lies in Pune Military Hospital, recovering from a skirmish on the wild northern frontier with little to do but reread the tales of his idol, Sherlock Holmes, and browse the daily papers. The case that catches Captain Jim's attention is being called the crime of the century. 2 women fell from the busy university's clock tower in broad daylight. Moved by Addie, the widower of one of the victims, and his certainty that his wife and sister did not commit suicide, Captain Jim approaches the Parsi family and is hired to investigate what happened that terrible afternoon. But in a land of divided loyalties, asking questions is dangerous. Captain Jim's investigation disturbs the shadows that seem to follow the Framji family and triggers an ominous chain of events. And when lively Lady Diana Framji joins the hunt for her sister's attackers, Captain Jim's heart isn't safe either. I'm really interested by this one. I don't think I've read a whole lot set in India, period, but certainly not in this time period in India. So I think that could be interesting. The last one in the historical fiction section, releasing November 23rd, is Confessions in B Flat by Donna Hill. The year is 1963. In Harlem, the epicenter of black culture, the fight for equality has never been stronger. The time is now. Enough is enough. Yet even within its ranks, a different kind of battle rages. Love thy neighbor or rise up against your oppressors. Jason Tanner has just arrived in New York to help spread the message of his mentor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of passive resistance, while beat poet Anita Hopkins believes the teachings of Malcolm X with all her heart, that the way to true freedom is by any means necessary. When Jason sees Anita perform her poetry at the iconic B-flat lounge, he's transfixed, and Anita has never met anyone who can match her wit for wit like this. One movement, 2 warring ideologies. Can love be enough to unite them? Oh, I hope so. Now we're moving into adult miscellaneous, is what I'm calling it. It's anything that I couldn't really fit into any other category perfectly. So there's a wide range of things here. First up, with the most interesting title, is Exquisite Cadavers by Meena Kandasamy. I might be saying that wrong. It comes out November 1st. Karim and Maya are lovers. They share a home, they worry about money, and then Maya falls pregnant. But Karim is still finishing his film degree, pushing against his tutor's insistence that his art must be Arab like him. And Maya, working a 0-hours job and fretting about her family, can't find the time to quit smoking, let alone have a child. Framed with fragments and peppered with footnotes, Exquisite Cadavers is at once a bricolage of influence and a love story that knows no borders. I'm either going to love that book or I'm going to hate it. This one I've had my eye on for a while. It's White Ivy by Susie Yang. It comes out November 3rd. Ivy Lynne is a thief and a liar, but you never know it by looking at her. Raised outside of Boston, she is taught how to pilfer items from yard sales and second-hand shops by her immigrant grandmother. Thieving allows Ivy to accumulate the trappings of a suburban teen and, most importantly, to attract the attention of Gideon Spare, the golden boy of a wealthy political family. But when Ivy's mother discovers her trespasses, punishment is swift and Ivy is sent to China, where her dream instantly evaporates. Years later, Ivy has grown into a poised yet restless young woman, haunted by her conflicting feelings about her upbringing and her family. Back in Boston, when she bumps into Sylvia Spare, Gideon's sister, a reconnection with Gideon seems not only inevitable, it feels like fate. Slowly, Ivy sinks her claws into Gideon and the entire Spare clan by attending fancy dinners and weekend getaways to the Cape. But just as Ivy's about to have everything she's ever wanted, a ghost from her past resurfaces, threatening the nearly perfect life she's worked so hard to build. Filled with surprising twists and offering sharp insights into the immigrant experience, White Ivy is both a love triangle and a coming-of-age story, as well as a glimpse into the dark side of a woman who yearns for success at any cost. That just sounds so good to me. I don't know why. It's something that's like a little bit dark about it. And I just think it's going to suck me in and hold my attention. And on November 3rd, we have The Museum of Forgotten Memories by Anstey Harris. Kate thought she'd met her match in Simon at university, until she laid eyes on his best friend Richard. Kate and Richard felt an immediate and undeniable spark, but Richard also felt the weight of the world more deeply than most. As the three matured, he receded further and further into darkness until he disappeared altogether. Now, 4 years after Richard's passing, Kate is let go from her teaching job and can't pay the rent on the London flat she shares with her and Richard's son Leo. She packs the two of them up and ventures to Richard's grandfather's old Victorian museum in the small town of Crouch-on-Sea, where the dusty staff quarters await her. Despite growing pains and a grouchy caretaker, Kate falls in love with the quirky taxidermy exhibits and sprawling grounds and makes it her mission to revive them. When the museum is faced with closure because of a lack of visitors, Kate stages a grand reopening, but threats from both inside and outside the museum derail her plans and send her spiraling into self-doubt. As Kate becomes more invested in Hatters, she must finally confront the reality of Richard's death and the role she played in it in order to reimagine her future. This really gives me like small town vibes, but also has that aspect of having to deal with grief that I always find to be so interesting in books. Oh my god, this one, I haven't heard anybody talk about this. And there's not like much of a synopsis, but I really want to read it. It comes out November 5th. It's called The Swallowed Man by Edward Carey. I am writing this account in another man's book by candlelight inside the belly of a fish. I have been eaten. I have been eaten, yet I am living still. From the acclaimed author of Little comes this beautiful and haunting imagining of the years Geppetto spends within the belly of a sea beast. Drawing upon the Pinocchio story while creating something entirely his own, Carey tells an unforgettable tale of fatherly love and loss, pride and regret, and of the sustaining power of art and imagination. Coming on November 10th, we have Cobble Hill by Cecily von Zigzar. I have no idea if that's how you say that last name. She wrote the Gossip Girl books, and I read like all of them as a teenager, and I still don't know how you pronounce this woman's name. Anyway, welcome to Cobble Hill. In this eclectic Brooklyn neighborhood, private storms brew amongst 4 married couples and their children. There's ex-groupie Mandy, so underwhelmed by motherhood and her current physical state that she fakes a debilitating disease to get the attention of her skateboarding ex-boy band member husband, Stuart. There's the unconventional new school nurse, Peaches, on whom Stuart has an unrequited crush, and her disappointing husband, Greg, who wears noise-canceling headphones everywhere. A few blocks away, Roy, a well-known newly transplanted British novelist, has lost the thread of his next novel and his marriage to capable, indefatigable Wendy. Around the corner, Tupper, the nervous, introverted industrial designer with a warehouse full of prosthetic limbs, struggles to pin down his elusive artist wife, Elizabeth. She remains elusive. Throw in 2 hormonal teenagers, a 10-year-old pyromaniac, a drug dealer pretending to be a doctor, and a lot of hidden cameras, and you've got a combustible mix of egos, desires, and secrets bubbling in brownstone Brooklyn. This is so different from anything else I've read by this author that I feel like I really want to check it out, because I want to see just how like wide her range is as an author. On top of it, it just sounds like an interesting look at humans, and not humans at their best, you know? On November 10th, we have The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. It's a short story collection. Danielle Evans is widely acclaimed for her blisteringly smart voice and X-ray insights into complex human relationships. With The Office of Historical Corrections, Evans zooms in on particular moments and relationships in her characters' lives in a way that allows them to speak to larger issues of race, culture, and history. She introduces us to Black and multiracial characters who are experiencing the universal confusions of lust and love and getting walloped by grief, all while exploring how history haunts us personally and collectively. Ultimately, she provokes us to think about the truths of American history, about who gets to tell them, and the cost of setting the record straight. In Boys Go to Jupiter, a white college student tries to reinvent herself after a photo of her in a Confederate flag bikini goes viral. In Richard of York Gave Battle in Vain, a photojournalist is forced to confront her own losses while attending an old friend's unexpectedly dramatic wedding. And in the eye-opening title novella, a Black scholar from Washington, D.C. is drawn into a complex historical mystery that spans generations and puts her job, her love life, and her oldest friendship at risk. Also on November 10th, we have the Transatlantic Book Club by Felicity Hayes McCoy. This is book 5 in a series, but I was looking at the different books in the series, and it seems as though they can be read on their own. And I think this is actually a series that I want to start. Distance makes no difference to love. Eager to cheer up her recently widowed gran, Cassie Fitzgerald, visiting from Canada, persuades Lisbig Library to set up a Skype book club linking readers on Ireland's Finfarron Peninsula with the U.S. town of Resolve, home to generations of Finfarron immigrants. But when the club decides to read a detective novel, old conflicts on both sides of the ocean are exposed and hidden love affairs come to light. As secrets emerge, Cassie fears she may have done more harm than good. Will the truth she uncovers about her granny Pat's marriage affect her own hopes of finding love? Is Pat, who's still struggling with the death of her husband, about to fall out with her oldest friend Mary? Or could the book club itself hold the key to a triumphant transatlantic happy ending? Next we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. It comes out November 17th. It is translated, so I don't know when the original came out. In a small back alley of Tokyo, there is a cafe that has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years. Local legend says that this shop offers something else besides coffee, the chance to travel back in time. Over the course of one summer, 4 customers visit the cafe in the hopes of making that journey, but time travel isn't so simple, and there are rules that must be followed. Most important, the trip can only last as long as it takes for the coffee to get cold. Heartwarming, wistful, mysterious, and delightfully quirky, Toshikazu Kawaguchi's internationally best-selling novel explores the age-old question, what would you change if you could travel back in time? I like that because it's a little bit of a mix of like a tiny aspect of sci-fi, but it sounds like the focus isn't on the science fiction or fantasy aspect or whatever. It's more focused on the people. Coming on November 17th, we have Here's the Beehive by Sarah Crossan. Anna Kelly can deal with death. As an estate lawyer, an unfortunate part of her day-to-day is phone calls from the next of kin informing her that one of her clients has died. But nothing could have prepared Anna for the call from Rebecca Taylor, explaining in a strangely calm tone that her husband Connor was killed in an accident. Anna had been having an affair with Connor for 3 years, keeping their love secret in hotel rooms, weekends away, and swiftly deleted text messages. Though consuming, they hide their love well, and nobody knows of their relationship except Mark, Connor's best friend. Alone and undone, Anna seeks friendship with the person who she once thought of as her adversary and opposite, but who is now the only one who shares her pain, Rebecca. As Anna becomes closer to her lover's widow, she is forced to reconcile painful truths about the affair and the fickleness of love and desire. I really want to read that. I know typically you don't want to necessarily support books that surround cheating, like, as the main topic. However, it is something that happens in real life. And I think being able to explore that in a thoughtful way could be really good, and it could help a lot of people. Next, we have Earth Eater by Dolores Reyes. This is another translated work. So it comes out on November 17th, but I'm assuming the original came out much earlier. Set in an unnamed slum in contemporary Argentina, Earth Eater is the story of a young woman who finds herself drawn to eating the earth, a compulsion that gives her visions of broken and lost lives. With her first taste of dirt, she learns the horrifying truth of her mother's death. Disturbed by what she witnesses, the woman keeps her visions to herself. But when Earth Eater begins an unlikely relationship with a withdrawn police officer, word of her ability begins to spread, and soon desperate members of her community beg for her help, anxious to uncover the truth about their own loved ones. Surreal and haunting, spare yet complex, Earth Eater is a dark, emotionally resonant tale told from a feminist perspective that brilliantly explores the stories of those left behind, the women enduring the pain of uncertainty whose lives have been shaped by violence and loss. Translated works are something I've really wanted to get more into because I'm not sure I've read that many, and I think this might be a good choice. Possibly the most depressing title I've ever heard. They Will Drown in Their Mother's Tears by Johannes Anjuru. I'm probably saying that wrong. It comes out November 17th. This is another translated book, so I'm assuming, again, when it came out in its original language, it was long ago. In the midst of a terrorist attack on a bookstore reading by Goran Loberg, a comic book artist famous for demeaning drawings of the Prophet Muhammad, one of the attackers, a young woman, has a sudden premonition that something is wrong, changing the course of history. 2 years later, this unnamed woman invites a famous writer to visit her in the criminal psychiatric clinic where she's living. She then shares with him an incredible story. She is a visitor from an alternate future. Despite discrepancies that make the writer highly skeptical, he becomes increasingly fascinated by her amazing tale. In her dystopian future, any so-called anti-Swedish citizens are forced into a horrific ghetto called the Rabbit Yard. As events begin to spiral and the author becomes more and more implicated in this woman's tale, he comes to believe the unbelievable. She's telling the truth. A remarkably intense, beautifully wrought tale that combines the ingenuity of speculative fiction with the difficulties of today's harsh political realities, They Will Drown in Their Mother's Tears is the groundbreaking, award-winning work from the best-selling Swedish-Ugandan author Johannes Anjuru. With echoes of Guantanamo Bay, Abu Ghraib, the Charlie Hebdo tragedy, and anti-immigrant hysteria, this largest and most complex novel from an already celebrated poet, author, and spoken word artist catapults him to the front ranks of world writers. That sounds fabulous. And I definitely need to pick that up. Whew. Last section, nonfiction. First, on November 3rd, we have The Best of Me by David Sedaris. I love David Sedaris. He makes me laugh. For more than 25 years, David Sedaris has been carving out a unique literary space, virtually creating his own genre. A Sedaris story may seem confessional, but is also highly attuned to the world outside. It opens our eyes to what is absurd and moving about our daily existence, and it is almost impossible to read without laughing. Now, for the first time, collected in one volume, the author brings us his funniest and most memorable works. I only have one book by David Sedaris. It's Calypso. So I think this could be really good because it would be kind of a collection from all his works. So I could do that rather than buying all of them individually, maybe? I don't know. We'll see. Less funny is Nazi Wives, The Women at the Top of Hitler's Germany by James Wiley. It comes out November 3rd. Göring, Goebbels, Himmler, Heydrich, Hess, Bormann. Names synonymous with power and influence in the Third Reich. Perhaps less familiar are Karen, Emmy, Magda, Marguerite, Lena, Ilse, and Gerda. These are the women behind the infamous men, complex individuals with distinctive personalities who were captivated by Hitler and whose everyday lives were governed by Nazi ideology. Throughout the rise and fall of Nazism, these women loved and lost, raised families, and quarreled with their husbands and each other, all the while jostling for position with the Führer himself. Until now, they have been treated as minor characters, their significance ignored, as if they were unaware of their husband's murderous acts, despite the evidence that was all around them. The stolen art on their walls, the slave labor in their homes, and the produce grown in concentration camps on their tables. James Wiley's Nazi Wives explores these women in detail for the first time, skillfully interweaving their stories through years of struggle, power, decline, and destruction, into the post-war twilight of denial and delusion. I am so interested in reading that book, because it's never even occurred to me, really, that there were women behind these men. Like, I knew, I guess, to some extent, but I never thought about them and what their lives looked like and how they thought or felt about what their husbands were doing. So that, I think, is going to be fascinating. Next, coming on November 10th, we have The Mutant Project, Inside the Global Race to Genetically Modify Humans by Eben Kirksey. An anthropologist visits the frontiers of genetics, medicine, and technology to ask, whose values are guiding gene editing experiments, and what does this new era of scientific inquiry mean for the future of the human species? At a conference in Hong Kong in November 2018, Dr. He Jiankui announced that he had created the first genetically modified babies, twin girls named Lulu and Nana, sending shockwaves around the world. A year later, a Chinese court sentenced Dr. He to 3 years in prison for illegal medical practice. As scientists elsewhere start to catch up with China's vast genetic research program, gene editing is fueling an innovation economy that threatens to widen racial and economic inequality. Fundamental questions about science, health, and social justice are at stake. Who gets access to gene editing technologies? As countries loosen regulations around the globe, from the US to Indonesia, can we shape research agendas to promote an ethical and fair society? Eben Kirksey takes us on a groundbreaking journey to meet the key scientists, lobbyists, and entrepreneurs who are bringing cutting-edge genetic engineering tools like CRISPR to your local clinic. He also ventures beyond the scientific echo chamber, talking to disabled scholars, doctors, hackers, chronically ill patients, and activists who have alternative visions of a genetically modified future for humanity. The Mutant Project empowers us to ask the right questions, uncover the truth, and navigate this brave new world. I am so interested in that book. Genetic modifications are something that I find totally fascinating. I don't even know how I feel about it from a moral standpoint, but I think that's why maybe I should read this book, because it would give me different viewpoints and allow me to come to my own conclusions. Add to that CRISPR has always been really interesting to me. I think this will be a good choice. Next we have We Keep the Dead Close, A Murder at Harvard and a Half-Century of Silence by Becky Cooper. Comes out on November 10th. 1969, the height of counterculture and the year universities would seek to curb the unruly spectacle of student protest. The winter that Harvard University would begin the tumultuous process of merging with Radcliffe, its all-female sister school, and the year that Jane Britton, an ambitious 23-year-old graduate student in Harvard's anthropology department and daughter of Radcliffe Vice President J. Boyd Britton, would be found bludgeoned to death in her Cambridge, Massachusetts apartment. 40 years later, Becky Cooper, a curious undergrad, will hear the first whispers of the story. In the first telling, the body was nameless. The story was this. A Harvard student had had an affair with her professor, and the professor had murdered her in the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology because she'd threatened to talk about the affair. Though the rumor proves false, the story that unfolds, one that Cooper will follow for 10 years, is even more complex. A tale of gender inequality in academia, a cowboy culture among empowered male elites, the silencing effect of institutions, and our compulsion to rewrite the stories of female victims. We Keep the Dead Close is a memoir of mirrors, misogyny, and murder. It is at once a rumination on the violence and oppression that rules our revered institutions, a ghost story reflecting one woman's young past onto another's present, and a love story for a girl who was lost to history. Now, this is kind of being classified as true crime, and I do see that it fits into that genre, but I think it is so much more than that. I think it's a look at power dynamics, especially among, genders, and I really want to see what the author does with it. Next up, we have Fossil Men, The Quest for the Oldest Skeleton and the Origins of Humankind by Kermit Pattison. Comes out November 10th. a behind-the-scenes account of the discovery of the oldest skeleton of a human ancestor named Artie, a find that shook the world of paleoanthropology and radically altered our understanding of human evolution. In 1994, a team led by fossil hunting legend Tim White, the Steve Jobs of paleoanthropology, uncovered the bones of a human ancestor in Ethiopian Zafar region. Radiometric dating of nearby rocks indicated the skeleton, classified as Ardipithecus remedis, was 4.4 million years old, more than 1 million years older than Lucy, then the oldest known human ancestor. The findings challenged many assumptions about human evolution, how we started walking upright, how we evolved our nimble hands, and most significantly, whether we were descended from an ancestor that resembled today's chimpanzee, and repudiated a half-century of paleoanthropological orthodoxy. Fossil Men is the first full-length exploration of Artie, the fossil men who found her, and her impact on what we know about the origins of the human species. It is a scientific detective story played out in anatomy and the natural history of the human body. Kermit Pattison brings into focus a cast of eccentric, obsessive scientists, including one of the world's greatest fossil hunters, Tim White, an exacting and unforgiving fossil hunter whose virtuoso skills in the field were matched only by his propensity for making enemies. Jen Sua, a Japanese savant who sometimes didn't bother going home at night to devote more hours to science. Owen Lovejoy, a one-time creationist turned paleoanthropologist. Burhane Afswa, who survived imprisonment and torture to become Ethiopia's most senior paleoanthropologist and who fought for African scientists to gain equal footing in the study of human origins, and the Leakeys, for decades the most famous family in paleoanthropology. An intriguing tale of scientific discovery, obsession, and rivalry that moves from the sun-baked desert of Africa and a nation caught in a brutal civil war to modern high-tech labs and academic lecture halls. Fossil Men is popular science at its best and a must-read for fans of Jared Diamond, Richard Dawkins, and Edward O. Wilson. Oh my god, I need to pick that up. Speaking of books I need to pick up, we have Paper Bullets, Two Artists Who Risked Their Lives to Defy the Nazis by Jeffrey H. Jackson. Comes out November 10th. Paper Bullets is the first book to tell the history of an audacious anti-Nazi campaign undertaken by an unlikely pair, two French women, Lucy Schwab and Suzanne Malherbe, who drew on their skills as Parisian avant-garde artists to write and distribute paper bullets, wicked insults against Hitler, calls to rebel, and subversive fictional dialogues designed to demoralize Nazi troops occupying their adopted home on the British Channel Island of Jersey. Devising their own PSYOPs campaign, they slipped their notes into soldiers' pockets or tucked them inside newsstand magazines. Hunted by the secret field police, Lucy and Suzanne were finally betrayed in 1944 when the Germans imprisoned them and tried them in a court-martial, sentencing them to death for their actions. Ultimately, they survived, but even in jail, they continued to fight the Nazis by reaching out to other prisoners and spreading a message of hope. Better remembered today by their artist names, Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore, the couple's actions were even more courageous because of who they were. Lesbian partners known for cross-dressing and creating the kind of gender-bending work that the Nazis would come to call degenerate art. In addition, Lucy was half Jewish and they had communist affiliations in Paris where they attended political rallies with surrealists and socialized with artists like Gertrude Stein. Paper Bullets is a compelling World War II story that has not been told before about the galvanizing power of art and of resistance. Lastly, we have A Promised Land by Barack Obama. It comes out November 17th. A riveting, deeply personal account of history in the making from the president who inspired us to believe in the power of democracy. In the stirring, highly anticipated first volume of his presidential memoirs, Barack Obama tells the story of his improbable odyssey from young man searching for his identity to leader of the free world, describing in strikingly personal detail both his political education and the landmark moments of the first term of his historic presidency, a time of dramatic transformation and turmoil. Obama takes readers on a compelling journey from his earliest political aspirations to the pivotal Iowa caucus victory that demonstrated the power of grassroots activism to the watershed night of November 4th, 2008, when he was elected 44th President of the United States, becoming the first African American to hold the nation's highest office. Reflecting on the presidency, he offers a unique and thoughtful exploration on both the awesome reach and the limits of presidential power, as well as singular insights into the dynamics of U.S. partisan politics and international diplomacy. Obama brings readers inside the Oval Office and the White House Situation Room and to Moscow, Cairo, Beijing, and points beyond. We are privy to his thoughts as he assembles his cabinet, wrestles with a global financial crisis, takes the measure of Vladimir Putin, overcomes seemingly insurmountable odds to secure the passage of the Affordable Care Act, clashes with generals about U.S. strategy in Afghanistan, tackles Wall Street reform, responds to the devastating Deepwater Horizon blowout, and authorizes Operation Neptune Spear, which leads to the death of Osama bin Laden. A Promised Land is extraordinarily intimate and introspective, the story of one man's bet with history, the faith of a community organizer tested on the world stage. Obama is candid about the balancing act of running for office as a Black American, bearing the expectations of a generation buoyed by messages of hope and change, and meeting the moral challenges of high-stakes decision-making. He is frank about the forces that opposed him at home and abroad, open about how living in the White House affected his wife and daughters, and unafraid to reveal self-doubt and disappointment. Yet he never wavers from his belief that inside the great ongoing American experiment, progress is always possible. I'll probably pick that up. I have 2 other books written by him that I haven't read yet, so maybe I should do that first. Anyway, those are, well, not all the books coming out in November, but a good chunk of them, the ones that I found interesting enough to mention. Let me know in the comments below if you plan on picking any of these up. I know there are several that I plan on picking up. If you like my content, subscribe, stick around. I'd love to see you in my comments. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.